Everything feels delayed. You've begged Allah for change, but silence answers you. The doors are closed, your heart is heavy, and your doers feel like they're going nowhere. But what if this isn't rejection? What if this is sacred preparation? Because sometimes, before Allah gives you the life you prayed for, He has to break the version of you that would have ruined it. 1. When you feel spiritually starved, but don't know what you're hungry for. You've been trying to feel better, but nothing works. You scroll for hours, you talk to people, hoping they'll understand, but you still feel misunderstood. You binge food, music, entertainment, not because it helps, but because silence feels too loud right now. And even on the days when everything should feel okay, your heart still aches. You smile when people talk to you, but deep inside, you're somewhere else. Tired, disconnected, not even sure what you need anymore. You try to pray, but the words feel empty. You try to sleep, but your soul stays restless. You try to distract yourself, but even distractions feel like a burden now. That's not laziness. That's not failure. That's not confusion. That's your soul starving. Not for food, not for affection, not for attention, but for Allah. Because for so long, you've been feeding your mind everything but truth. You've been giving your energy to people who drain it. You've been living a life that looks full, but feels hollow. And now, no matter what you do, you feel that ache, that emptiness, that slow, invisible sadness. It's not depression, it's not burnout, it's divine hunger. It's the space Allah created inside you that nothing in this world can ever fill. And the more you try to fill it with dunya, the louder the emptiness becomes. Because your soul wasn't created for noise, it wasn't created for scrolling, it wasn't created to be seen by everyone and known by no one. It wasn't made to chase love that leaves, money that fades, or status that means nothing when your heart is heavy. It was made for sujood, for surrender, for stillness in front of the one who never tires of hearing your voice. But here's the truth that hurts at first. Allah isn't rushing your story right now, because He's waiting for your soul to finally get quiet enough to realize what it's really missing. He's not punishing you with delay, He's protecting you from receiving a blessing that you would have misused just to avoid healing. Because you don't just need change. You need to come back to your center, to come back to the you who knew how to cry in sujood, the you who didn't chase distractions because you already felt seen, the you who didn't need people's approval because Allah's love felt enough. That's who you're starving to be again. And until you find that version of you, nothing will feel right. Not the success, not the relationship, not the dopamine, not even the wins you used to dream about. Because what you're missing isn't in the next chapter. It's in this moment, when your heart finally gets still enough to whisper, Ya Allah, I need you more than anything I thought I needed. That whisper is the beginning of real healing. That whisper is why Allah hasn't rushed your story yet. Because the story He's writing for you starts the moment you remember who you really are, when everything else is silent. 2. When everything feels like it's slipping through your hands, even the things you fought for. You did everything right. You tried to hold it together. You fought for that friendship. You gave your best to that relationship. You stayed up at night making plans. You stayed loyal when others walked away. You gave even when you had nothing left to give. But still, it slipped through your hands. No matter how much you cared, no matter how tightly you held on, it still fell apart. And now you're sitting with that heavy, unspoken feeling. What more could I have done? It's a kind of heartbreak people don't see, because they don't know the battles you fought in silence. They don't know how long you stayed hopeful, how many times you told yourself, maybe if I just try a little harder. But sometimes Allah lets the things you wanted the most slip through your fingers, not because you weren't enough, but because those things were never written to stay. You thought it was rejection. You thought it was failure. You thought it was proof that you're not worthy of being chosen. But what if it was protection? What if Allah saw something you didn't? What if He knew that the longer you held on, the more damage it would cause? Because the truth is, not everything you love is meant to love you back. Not every door you knock on leads to peace. And sometimes Allah doesn't wait for you to be ready. He ends it anyway, because if He didn't, you would have stayed far too long, in a place that was slowly draining your soul. So now you're standing here, with hands that feel empty, a heart that feels bruised, and a future that feels uncertain. But what you don't see is that Allah is clearing space. He's not punishing you by removing what you held on to. He's preparing you to hold something far greater than what you were settling for. Because He saw how much you compromised. He saw how much you overextended. He saw how you started losing pieces of yourself just to keep something broken alive, and in His mercy, He intervened. Even if it broke you, even if it felt like betrayal, even if you still don't understand why, because He knew you would have never let go on your own. So if everything feels like it's slipping, if the very thing you prayed for is crumbling, if the dream you nurtured for years is dying before your eyes, take a breath. Let your soul exhale. You are not being abandoned. You are being redirected toward a reality that doesn't require you to beg to be seen, toward a life that doesn't depend on fragile attachments, toward a love that doesn't slip when life gets hard. Allah is not rushing to replace what you lost, because He's letting your heart learn one of the most powerful lessons. Nothing you force will ever be secure, and nothing meant for you will ever slip away. So if it fell apart, trust that it was never your burden to carry forever. And if your hands feel empty now, just know that Allah never takes without preparing to give what your soul truly needs. 3. When you start longing for peace more than victory. There was a time you used to chase noise. You wanted the win, the recognition, the feeling of proving everyone wrong. You wanted to be chosen, praised, celebrated, and deep down, you thought that when that moment came, when you finally made it, you'd feel whole, complete, seen. But something has shifted in you. Lately, you don't care about the spotlight like you used to. You're not chasing applause anymore. You're not dreaming of standing on top of the world. You're just tired. And more than that, you're done. Not done in a hopeless way, but in a deeply spiritual way. You don't want noise. You want peace. You don't want the rush. You want rest. You don't want to impress people who never truly saw you anyway. You just want to breathe again, without pressure. You want a life where you don't have to perform to feel valuable. You want stillness, presence, something deeper than victory, something real. This shift from chasing outcomes to craving peace is not a breakdown. It's not weakness. It's not laziness. It's awakening. It means your soul is maturing. It means Allah is pulling you away from everything that once fed your ego to finally feed your heart. Because winning means nothing If you lose yourself to get there, success means nothing. If your soul stays restless in the process, and what looks like less on the outside might actually be the beginning of more on the inside. That desire for peace, that longing to be unseen but safe, to be unknown but held, to be far from the world but close to Allah. That's a sign, a sacred one. It means you're no longer trying to fix your life by force. You're starting to surrender your life to the one who knows best. And surrender doesn't feel like a trophy. It feels like relief. It feels like, Ya Allah, I just want peace, even if that means letting go of what I thought I wanted. Allah is not delaying your victories to hurt you. He's pausing the battle, so you can discover something greater than winning, peace that doesn't depend on outcomes, peace that isn't loud, peace that enters your bones in the quiet moments, when it's just you and Allah, and nothing to prove anymore. When that peace starts becoming your goal, that's when you know you're no longer chasing the world. You're returning to the one who owns your soul, and Allah never rushes the soul that is finally awakening. 4. When you're losing friends, motivation, and desire, but gaining clarity. You used to be surrounded by people. Your phone buzzed. Your calendar was full. Your life felt loud, fast, busy. And for a while, that felt like purpose. You were always doing something, always around someone, always chasing some goal, some connection, some excitement. But now, people are leaving. Conversations are drying up. Plans are falling through. And deep down, you don't even have the energy to fix it. The friends you used to text every day, you're not as close. The things that used to motivate you, they don't spark anything anymore. The dreams you used to obsess over, you're not even sure if you still want them. And it feels confusing, like you're losing yourself, like you're fading away from the version of you everyone used to know. But here's the truth. You're not fading, you're filtering, you're not being lost. You're being realigned, because there comes a moment in every soul's journey when Allah begins the process of subtraction. Not to hurt you, but to clear the fog, to remove every person who was pulling you away from Him, to silence every distraction that was stealing your peace, to detach your heart from things you didn't realize were making you spiritually numb. And in the beginning, that process looks like loneliness. It looks like disconnection. It feels like nothing is moving. But what's actually happening is something sacred. Allah is peeling away the layers of who you thought you had to be, so He can reveal the person you were always meant to become. You see, sometimes your soul grows in a direction your circle can't follow. Sometimes your vision becomes clearer and you start noticing the truth behind people's intentions. You start hearing the noise behind their words. You start feeling the tension in places you used to feel safe in. And suddenly, you no longer fit where you once felt at home. That discomfort is not a mistake. It's clarity. The kind that comes from silence. The kind that arrives only after loss. The kind that doesn't need noise to feel sure anymore. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just in a season where Allah is teaching you how to see again. And sometimes, clarity comes by removing what was once comforting, but no longer correct for your soul. So if you're losing people, losing passion, losing interest, don't panic. This isn't the end of your story. It's the removal of your blindfold. Allah is not taking things from you to leave you empty. He's showing you that when the world grows quiet, His guidance becomes louder. And when you finally start seeing clearly, you'll thank Him for every loss that led you back to light. 5. When you keep hitting walls, but your du'as keep getting softer. You used to pray with fire in your chest, begging, pleading, demanding relief. You asked Allah to open the door. Any door, you didn't care how, you just needed a way out. But the more you tried, the more walls you hit. Nothing worked, nothing moved. The harder you pushed, the stronger the resistance became. And somewhere along the way, your voice grew quieter. Your du'as softer. You stopped pleading like before. You stopped raising your voice at the sky, not because you stopped believing, but because your soul began to shift. You started realizing, this isn't about pushing anymore. This isn't about forcing something to open. This is about surrender. You stopped trying to control Allah with your desperation, and instead, you started trusting Him with your stillness. What changed? You did. The fire in your du'a didn't die. It transformed. It became deeper, more mature, more humble. It went from, Ya Allah, give me what I want, to, Ya Allah, give me what is best. That's a different kind of prayer. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it reaches the arsh, throne of Allah, with a weight no scream ever could. Because soft du'as are often the ones whispered by a heart that's tired of striving and finally ready to surrender. That's not weakness, that's strength, that's growth. And Allah hears those prayers, the silent ones, the trembling ones, the I don't even have the words anymore, Ya Allah kind of prayers. He hears them clearly, because sometimes the walls aren't punishment, they're redirection, they're mercy in disguise. You think you're being blocked, but what if you're being refined? What if every door that closed was Allah gently showing you, you're not ready for what's behind that yet, but I'm making you ready? What if every time your du'a softened, your heart softened with it? What if He was waiting for the noise in your soul to fade, so your whisper could finally be heard clearly? The truth is, when your du'as grow quieter, they don't become weaker, they become purer. And Allah responds to purity faster than He responds to noise. So if you keep hitting walls, if every plan keeps falling through, if you're exhausted from asking, don't stop praying, but let the prayer change you. Let it soften you. Let it heal the part of you that thinks everything depends on your effort. Let it remind you that what's meant for you will never require you to break yourself trying to reach it. Your softest du'a might be the moment Allah decides to open the door. You stop trying to force because you're no longer praying from panic. You're praying from peace, and that's when real miracles begin. 6. When you begin noticing the hidden versions of you that Allah is slowly shedding. There's something strange happening inside you lately. You can't explain it to anyone. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's real. You're starting to notice little shifts, subtle changes in how you respond, moments where you catch yourself before reacting the way you used to. Moments where the old version of you, the one who used to chase, please, overthink, explode, or numb out, feels like a stranger now. You're not perfect, but you're different. And it's not something you did overnight. It's something Allah is doing to you, quietly, patiently, from the inside out. You're starting to see that some of the habits, attachments, and beliefs you once called you were actually wounds in disguise, armor, survival modes. You're beginning to understand that your loudness wasn't confidence, it was fear of being ignored. Your silence wasn't peace, it was fear of being misunderstood. Your constant giving wasn't always kindness. Sometimes it was desperation to be needed. And as Allah brings this clarity, you feel exposed. But not in a shameful way, in a healing way. like he's holding up a mirror and saying, "This part of you was never yours. It was built in pain, and I love you too much to let it remain." You start realizing that the anger, the bitterness, the overthinking, the constant anxiety, they're not your identity. They're just layers you picked up while surviving the parts of life that tried to break you. And now Allah is slowly, lovingly peeling them off, not with force, but with mercy. He puts you in situations that frustrate your ego, but grow your soul. He removes people you once begged him to keep, because their presence was keeping you locked in an old version of yourself. He closes doors that fed your illusion of control, so you could finally return to the one who's always been in control. And the shedding hurts, because parts of you are dying. And grief isn't just for people, it's for versions of ourselves we thought we needed. But what's being born is something you've never seen before. A calmer you, a clearer you, a softer, wiser, more faithful you, and that version can't be rushed. So Allah slows everything down. He puts your dreams on pause. He delays the relationship. He postpones the success. Not to hurt you, but to protect this sacred process. Because you can't carry divine blessings with hands still gripping a false identity. You can't walk into what's written for you while wearing the mask of who you used to be. So if you feel like you're being unraveled, if you feel emotionally raw, spiritually sensitive, mentally exposed, it means you're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And every time you notice an old version of yourself fall away, say Alhamdulillah, because that's not loss. That's proof that Allah is still working on you, still guiding you, still committed to making you whole. Even when you're not asking, even when you don't understand, even in your quietest, weakest, most distant moments, He's still near, still editing the story, still shedding everything that's not part of the soul He's preparing. You are not who you were, and you are not yet who you will become, but right here, in this sacred shedding, you are finally walking the path to who you truly are. 7. When you feel like nothing's changing, but your inner world is quietly collapsing and rebuilding. On the outside, everything looks the same. Same routine, same job, same streets, same conversations. People around you probably assume you're fine because nothing about your life looks different. You're still functioning, still showing up, still smiling when they expect you to. But what they can't see is that everything is changing on the inside. Quietly, painfully, powerfully. Your inner world, the one no one sees, is collapsing and rebuilding at the same time. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not even something you fully understand yet, but you can feel it, like something is being torn down, brick by brick, and something else, something cleaner, something quieter, is slowly rising in its place. And it's confusing, because you're not crying every day, you're not falling apart publicly, you're not breaking in a way that looks obvious. You're breaking in layers, in your thoughts, in your habits, in your desires, in the way you respond to pain, in the way you view people, dreams, even yourself. There are moments where you stop mid-sentence and realize, I don't believe that anymore. Moments where you walk away from arguments you used to live for, moments where silence feels safer than proving your point, moments where peace matters more than being right, moments where you say no, not because you're selfish, but because your soul finally knows what it deserves. That's not stagnation, that's spiritual reconstruction, and the reason it feels so heavy is because old wiring is being dismantled inside you, the part of you that craved validation, The part of you that overgave just to feel loved. The part of you that begged Allah to change your life without realizing He was already changing you, piece by piece, quietly, from the inside out. That's why you feel emotionally tired all the time. Not because you're lazy, but because your soul is doing deep work. Work that can't be seen. Work that doesn't post results on social media. Work that doesn't come with applause, but comes with alignment. And Allah sees that work. He sees how you're still standing, how you're still praying, even if your voice shakes, how you're still hoping, even when hope feels thin, how you're still trying to hold on to Him, even when everything inside you feels undone. He sees the internal collapse and the quiet rebuilding. And that's why He hasn't rushed your breakthrough yet. Because He's not just preparing a new chapter, He's preparing a new narrator, a you who isn't just successful, but sacred. A you who doesn't just look strong, but is strong from within. A you who isn't just walking toward a better life, but walking with a better soul. And the world may not notice what's happening. It may think you're still the same, but the angels know. They see the nights you cried without words, the moments you chose patience when anger would have been easier, the times you sat in silence, because you didn't want to complain about Allah's plan anymore. They see you dash, rebuilding from ruins no one else knows exist. And one day, when Allah decides it's time, He will make the change visible. The world will see the light, but only after the soul is ready to carry it with grace. So if you feel like nothing is changing, but deep down, everything is, just know, this is the most sacred change of all, the kind that transforms who you are, before it transforms where you are. And Allah never wastes a soul in the process of returning to Him. 8. When you no longer crave the outcome, you crave Allah's timing. There was a time you couldn't wait, couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe without wondering, when will it happen? When will Allah give me the answer? When will the door open? You were obsessed with the outcome, with seeing the result, with getting the thing you believed would finally bring you peace. You used to stare at your dua like it was a deadline. You watched the clock. You watched other people receive what you were praying for, and it hurt. It broke you. It made you question everything. Why not me? Why not now? But slowly, almost without noticing, something inside you began to shift. You started praying differently, not with urgency, but with intimacy. You no longer rushed through your sujood just to get an answer. You stayed in sujood because you started realizing that was the answer. You stopped begging for things and started asking for trust. You stopped saying, Ya Allah, give me what I want, and started whispering, Ya Allah, don't give it to me until my heart can carry it with peace. That shift, from craving the gift to craving the giver, that's not small. That's the of a soul that's finally beginning to mature. Because Allah doesn't just give based on need, He gives based on readiness. And now, you're no longer asking for everything to happen fast. You're asking for it to happen right. You're not saying, why is it taking so long? You're saying, keep me close to you until it comes. You've stopped trying to rush the healing, the love, the provision, the success, because somewhere deep inside, you've started to believe that Allah's timing is not a delay. It's a mercy you don't yet understand. You realize that getting the right thing at the wrong time can become the worst thing, and you realized that a closed door can sometimes be the most loving answer. You don't need everything to work out fast anymore. You need it to be sacred. You need it to be something your soul can carry, not just your ego. And that's why this version of you is so rare, So beautiful, so close to Allah, because you're no longer obsessed with how soon. You're focused on how surrendered. And do you know what happens? When a soul reaches that level, Allah begins to give in ways that are soft, gentle, hidden, not with fireworks, but with ease. Doors begin to open. Not when you're shouting, but when your heart is quiet. Opportunities begin to flow. Not when you're chasing, but when you're trusting. You begin to receive, not because you forced your way in, but because you waited at the gate and said, Ya Allah, I'll wait as long as it takes. Just don't let me enter without you. That's the sign. When the outcome no longer owns your heart, because your heart belongs to the one who writes outcomes. And that's when Allah gives you, not just what you wanted, but what you didn't even know how to ask for. So if you're here right now, still waiting, still trusting, still whispering, Ya Allah, whenever you decide, I'm ready, then you're not behind, you're not delayed, you are exactly where you're meant to be, in the sacred space, between surrender and the miracle, between your dua and its perfect arrival. And nothing is more powerful than a soul that finally trusts Allah's timing more than its own desire. So if nothing's moving, if your heart is tired, if the silence is louder than your dua, don't walk away from Allah now. This isn't the end, it's the in-between, the sacred pause before the miracle, because sometimes the version of you that's waiting is not the one Allah will bless. He's not just changing your life, He's changing you, and when the moment finally comes, you won't even recognize the one who begged for it, because you'll be softer, stronger, wiser, and so much closer to Him. This story isn't stuck, it's being written by the one who already knows how beautifully it ends. So hold on, not to the outcome, but to Allah, because His delay is not a denial. It's a declaration. You are worth the wait.